Hello, everybody. It is May 16th, 2023. This is the Nefio SIG Automation Workload Subproject meeting. So, important meeting today, and I'm glad we have some of the main participants here who are working on the main aspects. So, without further ado, yeah, we're getting very close to having to release. As everybody knows, we've extended. We have another sprint after this one, so we're allowing ourselves to release in the first, I guess, in the second week of June. So that does mean technically we have about a month. We have about 4 weeks left, but it's a bit less. And I think we all know that we have to sort of converge here on at least having the bulk of the code that we can start fixing it. And I know it's been challenging, right? The specialization code and the types have been changing a bit. And every time that happens, not so easy on our end. But I have a feeling we're sort of coalescing to the final versions of everything right now. So maybe on to and Ronak, maybe you can share with everybody where you are right now, what's blocking you, where you need help.
Yeah, actually today only we had a discussion with Stephen, and the changes will be incorporated and we'll raise the PR soon.
Okay, yeah, so we do have a PR, and so you're saying it's going ahead smoothly and you don't really need help, right? You just need to sit down and work. Is that correct?
No, actually we had a discussion with Stephen today only.
Oh, you will have a discussion.
No, I had a discussion.
Okay, sorry, so I didn't understand. So what are the conclusions moving forward?
Actually, there was a change. There is change in that config map file regarding that N2 interface IP. So that will be incorporated, and we'll test the functionality and we'll raise the PR. Actually, the image is also we have to change that 3.2.0. I have to change the image and test the functionality. And here I think there is a storage issue. So these tests build are getting failed. I think I don't have storage approval. Might be.
Is it an issue within our project or a different project? Subproject?
No, actually that PR is showing failed, right?
Yeah, no, I misunderstood. You said, I don't think I understand. You said that there's another issue that hasn't been approved yet?
Yeah, actually I don't have storage access. That's why that PR is getting failed.
Oh, storage access, you said.
Yeah.
Which
storage access for what, actually? In the cluster? Or sorry.
Yeah, I don't understand what you mean by storage access.
Right.
Are you talking about the Mongo DB requirement?
Actually, while I was checking, it was showing that
I think the Mongo was UPF. I'm not so sure about AMF. And SMF doesn't have anything.
Stephen only told me that he will talk to someone. I forgot the name regarding that access.
But access, do you mean access to MongoDB?
Might be, not sure.
Who told you that? Sorry, I was
Stephen.
on the.
Yeah, Stephen told that there is a storage access problem, so he will talk to someone and
Oh,
get
I
it
see.
done.
You see, Stephen isn't here.
Steve.
Yeah, well,
He's probably talking about. Do you hear me? Actually, he's probably talking about Easy CLA, and Easy CLA has some issues like storage access. Like Steven can help. So basically, when like people create PR, Easy CLA does not recognize them. You know,
Okay,
I had the
I don't
same
think we have
issue.
that
Like
problem.
it took 1 week or so, like for Easy CLA to start working for me. So this is what
Yeah,
he
I
means.
don't
But
think that's our problem because the PR is here and this easy CLA is passed. So that is not the issue here.
I
So
think last night Stephen mentioned that there was some. Sorry, I was up late, so my brain is not working. Um,
Um,
but he was talking about the CLA, and there was some issue, but that was with the code, not the check-in mechanism. We'll check with him and report back.
Yeah,
okay,
we'll check with him.
all right. Okay, so we don't understand exactly what's blocking as a group here.
Yeah,
But so let's continue to talk this week. May I ask, I hope it's okay, what your availability is going to be this week? Are you going to be able to work on it? And yeah,
yeah,
I'm not trying to push anybody towards anything. I just want to know, just
No.
asking.
yeah. No,
Okay.
no, I will do it in this week only.
Okay, well, that's great news. So I imagine that this week we'll be able to progress and hopefully get the PR in.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
that's good. That's good news. And Antu, do you want to report where you are?
Yeah, so I rebuilt my Kubernetes environment per our conversation yesterday. I got
Yeah.
the P5 GC operator to deploy, but not the SMF. It's still blocked on. I'm trying to. Sorry, I need more sleep. So it pulls the toward 5GS, free 5GC SMF, 311, and I changed it to 320 and back to 311, try both, and it created the container, started the container, and then it fell, and it has an error that I can't remember right now. And I suspect it's because the config map is still not correct to
Yeah,
support
so
the container.
if you can see that error, then maybe we'll know probably yeah, something in its any file is wrong. So in the config map, that might be it. So it might
Yeah,
be
I mean,
reporting in the log.
well, right now I hardcode most of the config map except for the N4 interface IP, and I'm using that for PG, whatever that interface is. Sorry, 4 hours of sleep is not working for me. Anyway, so I'm gonna try some more today and then raise the flag and get some help if I can't figure this out. I
okay.
just know that it's a config map issue, but I don't know exactly which one. So
Okay. Yeah, I don't mean to put pressure here on anybody, just really just asking what the status is. We do have time, but it is starting to run close. So
I know.
I think if we manage to get a PR this week, and PRs for both of these, and they don't have to be perfect, right? They don't have to be completely working with everything, but just something that basically works and doesn't crash, right?
Yeah.
If we get to that point, then I think it will be easier for us as a community to look at the code together and help both of you, right? So
Yeah,
the idea is that, yeah.
I posted in the SIG Auto Workload my public repo that I cloned from the Nepio project. So if you guys want to look at it, it's available. I just it's not, the container won't come up and stay up. So I feel funny submitting a PR right now.
Right. Yeah, if you get to a point where it's stable, I think it'll be ready for a PR, even if it's imperfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a little hard to work with everybody's multiple repos. That's why I'm hoping to get the PRs in. So we're all working we're all looking at the same code base, right? And we're able to look at the three controllers actually together for the three components.
Yeah, and
Um,
then I did get the container to be scheduled on the worker node. So yeah, we got past that too.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, so
that's good.
progress, but very slowly. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, no need to apologize at all. I did want, yesterday working myself and Onto we're trying to fix an issue, and I noticed something that happens a lot, that sometimes when you delete, so everybody who works with Kubernetes knows this, that sometimes you delete resources and they don't get deleted, they just get hung up on terminating. And that happens a lot when you work with custom operators, because there's a lot of I'm forgetting that name again. What are they called?
Finalizer.
Yeah, the finalizers sometimes don't get deleted, and it's a thing that I know a lot. But actually, if you're interested, I created a little tool here. Oh, I guess I didn't commit it. Let me. Yeah, so I actually have a tool to nuke a namespace and actually force it to be deleted. So I'll share it with you guys later. I think it's, I unfortunately I have to use it quite a lot because some resources don't get terminated, and it's just a waste of time to try to chase it and rebuild clusters and things like that. But I have this nice little script which I call nuke namespace, which just completely destroys the namespace, whatever happens. It kind of circumvents everything. So I'll share it with everybody.
Yeah.
So
I
Okay.
started deleting my cluster before I saw your chats. Well, I was aware of
yeah,
trying.
yeah.
But now I can do the delete deployment without hanging, and the finalizer seems to be working. So I don't know what's going on there, but I'm not looking into it because it's working.
Okay, yeah. If you have time today and you want to work with me on this, we can try to move forward.
Sure.
Up to you. So
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I have other commitment right now that I need to take care of, so I'm only spending about half time on this.
That's okay. Yeah. I'm just hoping that we can get some progress this week, and I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
expecting it to be finished. That's okay.
No,
So
prep, interview prep. So
well, I'm sure we all wish you to break a leg. Break a leg.
Thank you. Anyway, next.
Yeah, so the next aspect is, talking a little bit about the edge status aggregator. So myself, Stephen, and Arvin are working on it, and it's getting there. We did a few PRs, and there are three components to it. There are three repositories, right? There's the Edge Watcher, there's the Edge Status Aggregator, and the Watcher Agent. And the three repos kind of have to work together, and they also they basically work, but we need to adapt them to the new API structure, right? So kind of, it's very similar to the work that you guys are doing on the three controllers, because we also have to adapt to the new KRM types. But also Stephen is working simultaneously on the topology controller, and the types there are also the types that the status aggregator interacts with. So the status aggregator framework, let's call it, really has to interact with everything. So there's just a lot of moving parts there. But I think, again, I think we're all coalescing, kind of the two sub-projects, specialization and workload, we're working on the same types, and we're kind of stepping on each other's toes a little bit, but I think things are starting to stabilize. And now we can really get everything together. So hopefully by this next meeting next week, we'll be able to all of us say that we're getting there, right? And once we have really all the source code basically working, we can work on fixing the specific issues, right? But we're not at a point really where we have a complete picture yet. So that's why that's why I put the word urgent here, because we are getting towards the end here, and we really need to be in a state where things basically work, and we just work on fixes rather than the major features. But yeah, I'm sympathetic to all of us here that, there's just moving pieces from elsewhere. So let's look at the project map and see. So yeah, we don't have anything with done, right? But I have a feeling that a whole bunch of stuff is going to move to done all at once in the next week. There are things on our to-do list that, some of them are test related, so obviously they'll have to wait for everything to yeah, there's stuff that we put kind of on the regarding to testing, but if we're all honest here, our testing is going to be quite basic, because I just don't see us having really a lot of time to build all these extra testing frameworks. So it's just going to be, it is what it is, right? We're going to be able to add as much testing as we can, but I think it's clear that the priority is just to make sure that the functionality and the end-to-end functionality is correct. Because soon we're going to have to start, I think from next week, start to bring all of Nephio together and really making sure that the entire loop, from the beginning, all the porch primitives through the specialization pipeline to the operators really works, right? So I think a lot of our energy is going to be focused on that. I would say that it's a lesser priority to have proper testing for the operators. And the UE ransom thing, I know some folk are working on it, but that is a stretch goal for us, right? If we're able to get everything working, then yes, we would love to make a manual call with UE ransom. It probably wouldn't be a lot of work. I mean, we can do just the minimal effort to make it to work. So I totally think this stretch goal is within our grasp. We can definitely do it, but it's just a lower priority, right? We'd rather make sure that the rest works correctly. So yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe there's not too much to talk about today. I think there's just a lot of work in progress.
Well, Tal, I wanted to ask and to work let's talk a little bit about that config map update. So
yes,
if
please.
the approach which we came up last week, if it works, then I'm going to create a PR. If we feel that we need to create new config map as John suggested, which will take more time. So
Yeah,
basic idea, we for updates, I created some just small piece of code which tracks annotation, and if annotation changes, if config map revision number it doesn't match that annotation, it just goes and kills pods, right? In deployment. So Tal suggested it's not correct. John suggests it's not correct. So we either need to use deployment itself to do rollback, which is possible. If I update annotation inside spec template and annotation, and it works, or more best practice solution is to create another config map, but it's a little bit more difficult.
Let me try to get everybody on board with what we're talking about here. So,
so that's that's the thing that I think John suggested, right? So creating a new config maps, and so that updates the deployment, and then and then we'll fall back on the whole thing on config older versions of pods not killing and able to take on the older version of config is. I understand the rationale. I understand everything. It's just not. It's probably not like the #1 primary concern. It's nice to have, but I guess it's the best practice for Kubernetes in general.
I mean, we can. Yeah, go ahead, Tal. Okay.
I suggested, I think, a very straightforward practice, which in my opinion is good. I'm not really sure what entirely what the cons are, but just to get everybody on board on the conversation here. So, we directly create a deployment, a Kubernetes deployment. The kubelet from the deployment creates a replica set, at least one, right? Actually, deployment is a pretty powerful concept in Kubernetes, and it's the recommended entry point usually, right? We have deployments, we have stateful sets and daemon sets, which are kind of variations. A deployment is very useful because it has features like enabling rollouts, you can upgrade versions. It's based on a template, right? Which it then uses to actually create eventually the pod. But the way it works, that a deployment actually indirectly creates pods. It first actually creates a replica set. And the replica set is in charge of running a number of pods. But deployment can work in a clever way where, if you're doing a rollout for an upgrade, you don't have to create a new deployment, right? You basically say you can change the template, and according to different rollout strategies, the deployment, for example, can create another replica set, wait for the new replica set to be up, and then switch to that. Things like that. There's actually a lot of configuration you can do. So this is kind of a best practice to use deployments, and why we don't create pods directly, right? Or even replica sets directly. Although it really depends on your workload, right? In some cases, the deployment or the replica set are not the right lifecycle management strategy, right? So if you look at a lot of operators out there, actually even here I'm looking at, just give you an example, something I have running. Git, for example, doesn't use deployments. Well, it uses deployments for its memcached component because that's a good thing to do, but for its own management, it actually creates pods directly. So it doesn't use a replica set for that. It only uses a deployment for for its memcached.
It creates
component.
stateful set.
Right, and it's exactly a stateful set for Postgres and a deployment.
But also for
memcached.
itself. But for itself, it uses Gitea. It's a stateful set. It doesn't do pods direct.
Oh, it uses. Yeah, you're right. There is a stateful set, right?
Yeah.
So okay, yeah, you're right. So yeah, but I didn't look at this closely. But yeah, if you look at, for example, other MongoDB operators, things like that, a lot of times they create their pods directly and manage it. So there are a few ways to think about this. But if we are working with the deployment, then if we want to restart pods or make changes like that, then the trick would be to just work directly with the deployment. So the way the deployment works is, if there's any change to the template, that would be considered an upgrade. So a very simple way to do that is just add some sort of metadata, some sort of annotation. And if the annotation changes, that means that the replica set would have to be recreated. So if we just add to the template here an annotation, which has the version of the config sync or UUID or something that we have, and if we just update that, then the deployment controller will do the rest. So that to me seemed really straightforward. Oh, and maybe add just another issue here if people aren't following. Why do we even need this? When you update a config map in Kubernetes, nothing happens. That is, if there's a pod that mounted that config map, it has no idea that the config map was changed. So it's only at the moment that the pod is started that the config map is mounted and copied in. But after that, nothing else happens. So this is kind of a deficiency, maybe you can say, in Kubernetes, that it doesn't keep track of that relationship. So that's why we have to solve it in a different way. So yeah, so my suggestion was, I think, very straightforward, just to update our deployment, because we're working on it anyway. I mean, the controller creates the deployment, so it just needs to update it. And John suggested another way, that we actually create a new config sync and reattach it. And yeah, he's not here in the meeting, but he said that there are certain cons to my approach. He said in my approach, maybe there'll be things that will capture the old config sync rather than the new config sync. I'm not sure that's the case. Anyway, I didn't really understand where he saw the con, but I think that if we first update the config sync and the update was successful, and then we update the template, then it should be okay, right? It will restart. Now, it could be that the pods will be restarted anyway, but that's also okay because they'll be restarted with a new config sync, right? If the pod starts again, then it will get the new config sync. So yeah, that's why I suggested that. I think my approach here is just the most straightforward. You don't have to deal with the pods directly. You don't have to deal with anything. You're using the deployment as it's intended to be used, right? So just updating here the template metadata with an annotation.
So just to understand, basically this update happens on the Git.
No. This is
On
our
the-
operator.
I just want to understand, is it directly happening on the API server or is it happening on the Git first? And then sync to the API server?
Which API server? You mean the Kubernetes API server?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, our operator controls all its resources, right? Our operator creates the deployment.
Oh,
right,
yes.
which
So
has-
basically, obviously, this is everything is after config sync we are talking. Because
Right, this is after config sync, right?
Yes,
So,
after
so
config
the
sync.
operator has the reconciliation loop. Let's look directly at the code. So we can look at.
yeah, I think that makes sense. I
UPF.
was thinking probably you can have an annotation or a flag or a label like config sync update time or something. You just update that one thing, like you said.
We have annotation. This is proposed solution, right? But I just get config revision number, and then if it changes, then it
Yes.
triggers deployment update.
Yes.
This is the idea right now how to deploy it. But yeah.
Right, so
then-
here it
Revision
is.
number or update time or something, anything. Yeah, something to denote.
Right. So here we're actually creating the deployment in the code. Right, so as part of the reconciliation loop, we have to update the deployment.
Yeah. See, I think that makes sense, Stoll, since I understand this is completely happening on the workload cluster post config sync. So it makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean-
Your solution looks simpler, sounds simpler to me.
I also
Yeah, I
agree
think
it's a good
so.
approach. I've done it myself to deal with this, so I think it's a good approach.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've done
and
it.
then he's tested it, right? So if it works, then I think for now that would be
Yeah,
great.
it works. It's
Yeah.
perfectly fine.
Uh,
I just don't understand like who is pushing config map update. So because it should
See, it's
be
it's a bit of a flow I think we have at the moment, right? I mean, because some of the parameters are coming, you're defining yourself as default. I think it's not the right approach in real life, right? So I think in reality, it should come through the deployment somehow. So this config map should be referred from the deployment somehow into the configuration that you get.
like this is
Right.
what is happening right now in the code. So like we have some
No, but you generate the config maps automatically with some default values, right? So you just
we get values from NADs, and then we put those values into the config map. It's templated. There are Go templates.
Yeah, okay, but I'm talking to like SMF and stuff like SNNI. There's a bunch of parameters that are hard coded right now. That's what I'm referring to.
DNN gateway, like gateways,
Yeah,
IP
so
addresses.
I
those you
mentioned
get,
for config map, UPF amazingly is the simpler one. So SMF
Yes.
is a lot more complicated.
I'm more referring
So
to SMF and AMF.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
SMF changes can happen outside of UPF config being changed. Oh, outside of SMF config being changed. If you add a UPF, for example, SMF config would change. And then when that becomes the case, it would. But for now, for R1, all the config map updates requests should come in from management cluster. So
Yes.
basically, the specialization pieces will push a high-level intent changes from either SMF deployment or UPF deployment, and then we just regenerate the config map.
So they're pushing new UP, for example, SMF deployment CR, and that triggers config map update, and that triggers actual SMF redeployment.
That's
Okay,
right.
fair.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You can
That's
see
the
loop
only
here,
that's the
right?
only work for
We're
today.
getting the current deployment.
Uh-huh.
We're getting the current
That's it.
deployment, and if it's found, we will update its status. So this is where I think the code will have to be added to not only sync its status, but also update its status.
Yeah. This is exactly where I wrote this function, just below it.
Yeah, for our R1 flow, the only possibility of config map updates would have to come from management cluster. So there's no local reparations or anything like that.
Right. I mean, this is the Nefio flow, but I mean, these operators work on their own, right? If a user comes in and just updates the UPF deployment, right, which is totally possible, right? This is what we're following here.
It can happen too.
So I mean, behind the scenes, config sync will update it for us, you know, but anything could update it, right? So for example, if somebody is using something other than config sync to bring things to the edge cluster, then it would do the same thing, right? My point is, this is just very standard Kubernetes operator, right? Where we're just following our CR, our UPF deployment CR, and updating our resources accordingly, right? So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, then, like as a conclusion, I'm going to create a PR, and you guys can take a look, and well, if something has to be changed, like let me know.
That sounds great. Yeah. So
yeah.
we'll have to follow the same thing in AMF and SMF.
And SMF, yeah.
Right. So, but I think again we can do this a little bit later, right? So on to don't worry about having that perfect for the first PR.
For the end of the sprint, if you don't have that perfectly fine during integration cycle, if we get to user journey 2 at all, then we'll correspondingly make code changes. It's okay. Yeah. It's more important to get the basic things in place. I gave the same message to Ronak and others also.
I think we all know what we're working with, and I'll say more. Even if we add these kind of changes here, doing a correct testing for all the kind of reconciliation loops and the day 2 updates we have, we're not there yet. So even if we add the code, it's not going to be really well tested. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think we all know that R1 is just, I mean, the whole aspect of day 2 changes for R1 from end to end, right? From updating packages in Porch all the way through specialization. I mean, that's a whole complete narrative that we haven't gone deeply enough yet, right? So that'll be something for R2, but
I think the only scenario
I have a question.
was mentioned. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
This is the second time I said I have a question. So can I ask the question, or do you guys like to talk?
Please go ahead.
Vim, the SMF config has a lot of hard-coded entries, and if you have a moment, I'd like you to look at it and tell me beyond the N4, I mean, what other things I should try to templatize if I have time.
I think, but I think it requires a bit of a bigger discussion. I think because I think we have the reservation in the NF deployment to refer to additional configuration, right? And in my view, that's the right mechanism to be used to add these, let's say, opaque parameters. But we have not implemented that at the moment.
Okay.
Right. So in other words, so the way that we designed the NF deployment is that we had the ability to have opaque CRs or whatever, let's say, Kubernetes KRM that the workload cluster can understand. We could augment it, right, without doing any specialization. They come straight from the package, from the blueprint package. And this is something we have not used at all. And this would have allowed to have all these default parameters to give you the right context around them.
Okay.
Right.
So for now, the N4 IP interface is the only thing I need to worry about in terms of templates.
Those are there, but for example, I don't know, Steven, there is the peer config stuff, right? You haven't approved yet.
So let's be honest. For now, let's get the N4 in there so we see it.
N4 is there, but the peer side, are we going to?
No. So we need
that thing
to
or not?
get that in, and we need to get that in. We need to make that change. But then for now, in terms of getting on to a point where bring up the SMF and see that the configuration takes the N4 IP address would be a very good initial start.
No, sure. But can we already approve the other PR that is pending for 2 weeks? Because we can act upon it already. Whether you use it or not is doesn't really matter. But right now we are also blocked because of it. And the problem is if we wait yet 1 or 2 weeks, we will have no time to do it. So I'm afraid that we are creating problems for ourselves by not going ahead with it. And this is already pending for 2 weeks, I think.
Okay. So that's on me. So I'll
I mean,
definitely,
because
I'll definitely
we are blocked.
get a comment in today. Yeah.
And then the other thing that Anne says is, I think one of the things that we should discuss probably beyond R1 is to see whether we could have these, let's say, additional CR referenced from the NF deployment, in which case you can have every parameter that we can imagine we could refer to.
Right.
And that would help us to get rid of all these things that you are doing undercover right now.
Right. You know, I generally feel like we put too much stuff in our basic models, like because we're free 5GC focused so much here. So imagine like Nokia has a UPF product that they also want to bring into the mix. So they'll use those extensions with extra, I think you called it opaque data. I'll call it vendor specific data.
Whatever
right.
you call it, but it could be as simple as a config map, right? So it can be as simple as a config map where you put some values in that the operator understands. That's the basic idea.
It wouldn't be this operator, right? Nokia would be writing their own operator for their own product. This is for free 5GC.
Yes, but we could have given an example to the field to how to do that. That's my point.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, this goes into the whole topic of having an operator SDK with all these primitive.
No, I mean, that's the next evolution. For me, it's like, how do you extend with vendor-specific parameters or opaque data that is only relevant for you? We could have I set an example. Whether you use an SDK or not, for me, is irrelevant. That's an implementation. In my view, it's about setting an example on how to do so. And an SDK makes it easier to build that, but for me, it's not mandatory to show that.
Right. I think it's rather trivial, you know, because it's just objects. And, you know, if you're dealing with it in specialization, so you'll have to it's your objects, so you know them, right? There's not a lot of.
No, that's not true. That's not true, because for us, we don't even see opaque data. We have no clue about, not in specialization. So in other words, for me, it's not my problem, it's our problem. We want to show how this works end to end. So in other words, we could have put a bunch of.
Okay. Yeah. I see you want
this
to
is an end-to-end thing.
The use of that. Okay.
I mean, that's.
I understand what you mean. Yeah, you know, I wish we could do that. If we have an opportunity to show the use of that data for free 5GC, we should. I wonder if it'll come up in SMF, you know, some free 5GC specific parameter. It could be even something really, really simple, right? Nothing, I don't know, like, I'll give you an example, like logging level, right? All the components, you know, they log, and maybe you can control the logging level with a special parameter, right? Just to show that there is some sort of configuration data passing through, right?
For example, like the image or like the NSSI IDs and stuff like that. So we could basically put like a value in a config map that the operator understands. It's config map. You just have it's basically a map with a string and a data, right? So you just say, okay, if this key is this, then I know what it is, and then I use it. So these are all kind of very easy ways to show how this can be extended with parameters that we don't want to deal with.
This makes a lot of sense, but I don't think we've created any issues for that. It's just not something in our scope right now. I wonder if they'll have to wait for R2 to show that.
Yeah, sure. It's possible for R2, but I'm trying to say that that semantics, we have that in place, but we have not exercised it.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. I mean, it's built in, but you're right. And part of the reason this is the case is just free 5GC is so simple. So it doesn't require those kind of extra configurations. So, but yeah, it's
I think you can make an argument that it does, because it may not be the base configuration may not need all that other stuff, because it basically SMF, for example, we have to push them the whole topology now, almost, right? So you know, you can make that argument, but then again, we're moving in directions where we actually do the reverse, which is dumping everything into a single structure. And so the good thing is this should eventually when we refactor, everyone share the same code, and it'll be a little easier to debug and things. The big thing is the flip side is the NF deployment is getting really bloated.
I honestly feel like a lot of our types have become very bloated. We have use case specific types here for Free5GC core, which is, they're too opinionated in my case, in my opinion. But our whole modeling discussion was cut short because we wanted to move towards implementation, and we're just accepting basically any PR from anybody with a suggestion with a little bit of discussion. But we're going to have to, after R1, look at all our models carefully and think what we're really building here in terms of modeling. In my opinion, it's all been a little too rushed, but it is what it is at this point, and we're just trying to show that the whole mechanism works, and we can get into the details of what properties are inside every model and what should be in the extensions later. Yeah, but I agree with you, Wim. I wish we had some space to test that specific mechanism of extensions, but I just don't know if it'll fit in. As I said, we don't even have any issues open for it. So
I think there is one issue open, which is the image config, where I basically made this comment. There is a PR on the image config, which is basically that.
That is an extension. That's an extension when we were ONE Summit. That's why it got spin off.
okay.
And there was, I believe even right now we don't really have a clear path of how to change an image config and manage by different controllers and be able to sync that into the other controllers that updates the deployment.
Yeah,
so
the whole day
I
two.
mean, making it functional is a very, I mean, I could understand processing it, understand the modeling. The actuations, I don't know. It's not really there yet. But
Yeah,
anyway,
the
so
same with
it
me.
is-
The
it
whole,
is
the
what it
whole flow for day two changes is unclear to me. But yeah, well, let's focus on what we have. We're already kind of getting with time is running short.
Yeah.
So
yeah, one more week of work. So I mean, let's try to get things going.
yeah, I think if by next week, yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, I think, let's, we have to wrangle the scope. We have 1 week this time, maybe one more week next sprint, then we need at least 2 weeks for testing it. So
I would say the next week's meeting is very critical. We have to look at the status of everything. And that is the week where we have to really, no more scope, right? It's really about just making sure that what we have is working. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Because the next sprint in June is really going to be focusing on getting everything working together as a whole. And we don't really want to make big changes to the existing code, right?
Yeah, so presumably in terms of schedule, and Bala is looking at it, is that next Tuesday is quote unquote code freeze. So that basically means feature freeze. So every feature related development code should be in by then, and then everything else after that is quote unquote bug fixes due to integration testing.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, feature freeze should have already happened. It basically did happen. It de facto did happen. I don't think anybody is really adding features unless they're absolutely necessary to get something running. But
well, feature code freeze. So
feature code feature freeze.
The code for the feature would have to go in. But then again, you still have to. Everything else will be bug fixes.
Bug fixes or maybe installer related code or docs or things like that. Those things can go in.
Yeah. I mean, another big thing we have to do is documentation for everything. But I think once the code isn't in place.
Yeah, I think we have tasks for those things, but yeah, those things will come next week.
Yeah. I suggested that the project as a whole would need something like a documentation SAR. One person who just looks at all the documentation and make sure it's consistent with each other and linked to each other properly and stylistically coherent. But we'll see about that if we can actually get to that point. But yeah, documentation is a very important deliverable for us. But
yeah, I think I have created 2 doc tasks, one for the user docs, one for the installer. So at the minimum, we need to have those 2 docs.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's more about, we have so many repos and every repo has its own README. Maybe on the wiki or someplace else, we need kind of a guide for the documentation, so people really know where to go and what to read for what purpose, right?
Yeah, then there's a separate
Anyway,
document
that's
for
not
user
specific
projects,
to
so
the subproject. Yeah, well, we can talk about it in the general SIG #2 meeting, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. I think we have a plan ahead for the next week, and yeah, but please, everybody, use the Slack for discussions. You're not alone. Anybody who's stuck or needs help or needs a question answered, please go to the community, and we're all going to try to help and get this moving. All right. Any other topic? Okay, well, I think this is great. As always, I want to thank everybody for their hard work here. I know it's like not everybody's full-time job, and it's hard to juggle all of this with everything. And I hope nobody feels too much stress or pressure here. It's not, we're doing what we can with the resources we have available, and your contribution is going to be part of this project anyway. So thank you again to everybody, and we'll talk on Slack.
Before we wind up, I just wanted to, since Stephen is here, would it make sense to just ask what the issue was Ronak was running into?
Oh, correct. Yeah.
What is that again?
Stephen, Ronak said he was running into some kind of storage issue, which we.
Yes, so there's a set of people that keep on bumping into the issues where if you part of the pre-submit test keep on saying that there's a permission issues to the Google storage. So Rado's not here, but then I would like to ping him to see there's something we have to do on the submissions to ensure that we have like proper permissions to execute the pre-submit test.
So this is part of a pro job. How?
If you click details against failed jobs, maybe it will be there.
Yeah, but which job are we talking about? That is the problem.
All of them. Test? So when it happens, all the tests, the GoSack, the pre-submit, and the
can you? Yeah. I mean, can you put the link to this this thing PR in the Slack? I will create an issue, Tom.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure. So I
various different people bump into that.
Already. Okay, I will create an issue and then I'll ping Rado and I'll work with them on this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here you go, Bala. Yeah, I didn't see any errors related to storage. They were all something in the code.
Let me send it to Ronak's, and actually mine even had the same problem.
Right. If you look at the
let me push it up. For example.
Right. It's in the Go file. It didn't even reach the point of using any storage. Okay.
Yeah. So if you take a look at this, for example.
Yeah, it's all Go.
If you click on raw build log, which is also right here.
Yeah, it's just the same. I think it's just
okay, well, this is different. So now I see a real Go error for the test. So nice. Because last night when I look at it, the failure seems to be like Google storage related. So it doesn't seem to be okay. So those are real errors this time. So
yeah, these are. So this shouldn't even.
I guess Ronak resubmit, and then now they finally point to the right thing. So the bug, the code fix, the code problem with his code, which is nice. Okay, good.
Yeah,
this is much better. I mean, otherwise, if it keeps on pointing as a permission issue, then we have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? If you hit that issue, can you post about it in Slack?
Yeah. So next time when I see it, I'll post it.
Okay. So Stephen, should I file the issue work with Rado?
Well, let me give you failures that actually points to the right thing. So that'll be a little easier. Okay. I think mine still has that or something. It could be a transient thing too. Also.
Okay. Yeah, it might be a transient thing. Okay. All right. Well, keep us posted.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maran.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Thanks, Tal.
Bye-bye.